Hi, my name is Tobias Buckell, and I'm a science fiction writer. I grew up in the Caribbean, lived on boats, and it has been my dream since I was 15 years old to be a science fiction writer. And the reason I'm up here is, even though my first novel is coming out from one of the big six at the end of the month, I kickstarted a novel and successfully crowdfunded it. I say I crowdsourced it, but that's me just screwing up on my presentation when I was putting it together because I was really nervous and not paying attention to what I was actually doing. This is my novel. I crowdfunded it. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about the process of crowdfunding it and why that was so interesting. My first series did okay, kind of flatlined a bit, and we decided to go in a different direction. And one of the things that kept happening is as I was going to events, I started to have fans show up and ask me, when is this fourth book going to come out? I write science fiction, it's sort of niche. But people were really enthusiastic about this series, and even though we weren't quite getting the traction we wanted, it was quite clear that there was a dedicated sort of core fan base, and so I decided to crowdfund this fourth book. And that's my little story and why I was invited up here. So the process of crowdfunding is getting a lot of people together to sort of like pre-fund your object, whatever that is. For my case, it was a novel. And they all put in a donation. It can be at different pledge levels. And once they put in that donation, usually someone like Kickstarter waits until enough money has been piled up, okay, and then we'll release it. In my case, I wanted to raise 10 grand. And once that was released, once we raised enough money for 10 grand, the project was deemed successful, and they would go ahead and release it. Had we not reached 10,000, it would have been an unsuccessful project, and I would not have gone ahead and gotten that money. There are a number of other groups that do this. Indiegogo, Rocket Hub, Artist Share, all sorts of different places, and it's really becoming a rapidly proliferating process. The reason it's interesting to me as a creative artist is that Kevin Kelly, a few years ago, wanted to talk about the concept of the 1,000 true fans. And I wondered if you don't even need 1,000 true fans, but merely 1,000, or maybe 200 instead of 1,000. And one of the things that you see in publishing is that there are a lot of poor writers and not too many rich ones. And everyone says that digital is going to fix that, and there are a lot of people who are boosting it. But the thing is, I still see a lot of poor digital-only authors. And a lot of people were telling me, hey, why don't you take this project and go straight to digital? Why don't you put your book straight to Amazon? And one of the things that prevented me from doing that was this concept of risk, which is that if I were to go ahead and spend a year writing a fourth book in a series and no one in heck wanted to buy it, that was going to cost me a tremendous amount of time, resources, savings. And one of the cool things publishers do is they pay you money in advance for a book, which is why I like them. Now, the advances aren't much. Over the years, they've gotten smaller and smaller, because what I wanted to point out is I actually took a survey once of what niche genre writers like myself got. We're not famous. We're not out there. And as you can see on my Kickstarter project, I got roughly the same amount of money as a first-time writer or a writer who'd been around a couple times. So it ended up being a very comparable, actually, payday for me. And one of the reasons an advance is important is because it gives you the time you need to go ahead and create the project. And just putting out the digital book and waiting and hoping that people will, give you a few $100s a month and let it trickle in is a huge risk investment to ask people to do. And now we are all potential encouragers, micro-patrons, backers of the arts and products we'd like to see. It's incredibly empowering because it takes that idea of risk and flips it for the writer and lets us create trial balloons of projects that may or may not succeed within the 30 days that we tried to create that Kickstarter project. Okay? Now, who does this work for? It works for people like me who are micro-famous or have gotten some measure of fame that they can play out. One of the things we don't see is very new writers being able to use this. So in terms of revolutions, it's not so interesting. You need to have this sort of compelling project, a large readership, and an online social following, because I see things where like writers with a large readership but absolutely no online social following completely fail. Writers with a non-compelling project fail. And you need to have had enough people around that either trust that you're going to write a novel so that you've done it before, or you have to do something so amazing in your presentation or produce a project that people so desperately want that even if you have no experience producing it, they'll get very excited for it. Look, it's an incredible thing to do. There are a lot of people who are companies, there are a lot of individual artists, and they're all putting these things up there, and there's an incredible amount of success. 50% of all Kickstarters, or 40% of all Kickstarters, have actually funded. And anyone who gets up to 30% of your funding within the project at some point actually succeeds. So there's a great quote here, the biggest risk is not taking a risk. What this lets you do is it lets you take a risk on a project, put it up there, and see if people will buy it. And this is just the beginning, because even though $12,000 is not a lot of money to make a living off of, once you have that book, you still can control it. You can sell it, You can do further printings, you can sell audio rights, you can do graphic novel adaptations. For someone like me, this has been very epic. Thank you.